With a 59% pick rate, Skye was tied for the most played agent at the recent Masters Tokyo event. Safe to say, she's currently the strongest initiator in the game, and if you've never played her before or are looking to refresh your skills, there's no better time to learn how to play Skye.
Swing around, forget about waiting, he wants to take the fight to their doorstep, and it's the ace for Kalanzin!
As per usual, we should first go over Skye's role on a team and why she's so strong in the current meta. Skye is an initiator, and initiators in Valorant are typically classified into two different subcategories. You've got your flash initiators like KO and Breach, and you've got your info initiators like Sova and Fade. But the thing with Skye is that she's actually the best of both worlds, as her kit allows her to do both at a high level. I personally believe she's the best flash agent in the game, currently, given that her flashes are the most maneuverable, long range, versatile, they refresh on cooldown, and they give info on top of that. And when it comes to info, you can even make the argument that she might be the strongest info initiator with all the additional tools in her kit. When it comes to playing in a team, Skye is great as all her abilities are best used to set up teammates. Her flashes are long and easy to maneuver into great spots for your teammates to peek off of. Your wolf is great to take map control and attack and re-clear space on defense, and of course her heal can only be used on teammates, so nobody's gonna be angry to have a Skye on their team. But despite all that, Skye is still great for setting yourself up to get kills even if you don't have any teammates around. If you learn to time your flashes properly around corners to make them pixel perfect, they're super hard to dodge and can set you up for easy kills, especially if you want to combo with your wolf as well. Alright, now let's get a little more specific and dig into her abilities, starting of course with her signature guiding light, aka her flash. This is your E ability, and Skye can hold up to 2 of these at the start of any round. You get one for free and the other you'll need to buy for 250 credits. And because it's your signature, once used, your flashes will begin to refresh every 40 seconds, meaning you can potentially use 3 to 5 of these in a round if it goes long enough. What's most unique about Skye's flashes compared to other agents is that they can be controlled mid-flight by using your mouse. Once released, you can continue to hold your fire key and move your mouse to maneuver it through the air, then reactivate it to turn it into an actual flash. What's key to know is that how long enemies are flashed, your flash duration, is actually determined by how long your flash is moving through the air. At its shortest distance, the duration will be 1 second, and at its longest, it will be 2.25 seconds. When it comes to how you want to be using these flashes, the most common one you're gonna be using is the pixel perfect around the corner to flash enemies the fastest and give them the lowest chance to turn or dodge. This is pretty easy to do after a couple tries. It's all about getting the timing right to pop it as fast as possible. Like I said, this is probably going to be your go-to during games when flashing for yourself around corners, but it isn't impossible to dodge, and if you see the enemy team is fast and are starting to dodge, it may be a good idea to start incorporating some fake flashes. This just essentially means tossing your flash around a corner, but instead of popping it, you actually peek behind it to catch enemies off guard who are turning to a wall to dodge it normally. This will throw a lot of players off and can be super effective. But if you start doing it too much, enemies of course will start catching on and may either start not turning your flashes entirely or have a teammate behind them playing anti-flash. If you notice this is starting to happen, then you can of course start doing fakes with delayed flashes. This is where you basically throw the flash in a spot where it'll end up behind you when you peek. You don't insta-pop it to make it look like a fake, then right before you peek, you pop the flash so that the enemies who didn't turn away get flashed because they thought it was a fake, and then you pick up the kills. Now, at this point, everything is just starting to become a mind game between you and the enemy team, and that makes you a really scary player as Skye, as they never really know if you're gonna insta-pop, fake with delay, or something else entirely. It makes you really difficult to play against, and the enemy team is gonna get really frustrated, which is always a good thing and can be pretty funny sometimes. This is why Skye's flash is the most dynamic in the game. It gives you by far the most creativity in how you want to use it, and the sky is really the limit in these situations, no pun intended. Now, those techniques are best for when you're flashing for yourself and trying to get kills, but like I said earlier, I actually think Skye's best aspect is how well you can set up your teammates with your flashes, especially on the attack side. If you want to be properly flashing for your team, the main thing is communication. Let them know when and where you're throwing your flashes. As a Skye player, or someone who plays any initiator really, you need to be the most communicative player on the team for the most part. And it's also not just shouting, "I'm flashing," before every flash, but being a little more precise with your comms. Instead of saying, "I'm flashing," you can say, "Flashing close, flashing deep, flashing right, flashing left." Might not seem like much of a difference, but as a guy who occasionally plays Jett in ranked with many bad Skye players, that difference in comms often means life or death for me, as I know if I'm gonna get team flashed or not. Always try your best to position your flashes in places where they're gonna end up behind your teammates so they don't get full flashed by you. I always try when I can to take advantage of map geometry to best set up my flashes. Certain spots like the window on B site Ascent, over the wall on A long Heaven, or even the art window on Pearl are great spots to throw flashes for your team when they're trying to take space in these areas. Even the tiny window on B site Lotus is amazing for retaking with your team once communicated properly. I also quickly want to go over what might actually be the most important aspect of playing any flash agent in the game, not just Skye. That is, abusing flash zones literally all the time. If you can effectively play around flash zones as a Skye player, you're gonna be picking up so many more kills and making the enemy team tilt twice as fast. But what are flash zones, you ask? Well, the term flash zone is something I actually picked up from fellow YouTuber Woohoojin, and is basically just an area of the map that is wide open and has little to no places for cover.
So, for example, let's say they're in tree. That flash there just fully blinds everybody in tree, and they've got no escape. Once again, here you can see that's the tree one I was talking about. The yellow refers to where you would stand, and the red refers to where they will be when you kill them.
Think places like tree on Lotus, A long on Haven, and pretty much all of B long on Pearl. If you get caught by a flash in these zones, you're basically as good as dead, hence the term flash zone. So when playing Skye, try to identify the areas on maps that would qualify as a flash zone and abuse it as much as you can for easy kills. One of the easiest ones to play around in my opinion is B long on Bind on the defense side. B long is so easy to hold down on defense as a Skye player, as it's open, narrow, and there's no place to run once enemies walk up a bit. Catching a player in this zone is almost always gonna guarantee a kill and make it so enemy teams are forced to use extra utility just to push you out of this area, which is always a net positive for you of course, as then they don't have as much util for the site exec. And of course, lastly, when it comes to her flashes, we have to quickly cover the entire info aspect, which is unique to her flashes currently. When popped near enemies, her flash will give off a unique sound cue if the enemies are flashed.
Blinded. One enemy remaining.
You won't know how many enemies are flashed, but you will know at least one enemy is in the area you just flashed. Use this info accordingly by communicating it with your team, allowing you to change plans or reposition if needed. On defense, for example, if you flash enemies in B main with only 20 seconds left in the round and you don't know where any of the enemies are, that's probably a really good indicator that they're hitting your bomb site, and you can quickly call over for rotates from your team to help you out. Or if the enemy team is hitting the opposite bomb site of where you are, you can use a flash while rotating to find any potential lurkers from the attacking team and take care of them. If the enemy team is playing slow, you can continue to use them to find info for your team or stall their potential pushes for a bit. You can also use the sound cue of your flashes to know when to peek and kill enemies, as they will typically be full flashed if the cue goes off.
Hawk out. Blinded.
And I say typically because the sound cue goes off if your flashes hit them from any area, front, back, or sides. And of course in Valorant, if a flash lands behind your head, you won't be full flashed but only flashed for a fraction of a second, which is nothing really. So don't always peek into enemies when you get the sound cue, as it could lead you into a false sense of security, thinking the players are full flashed when in reality you may have pushed your flash out a little bit too far, leading leading them to not be full flashed, leading to your immediate death. So that's something you always need to keep in mind with the sound cue on the Skye flashes. Okay, that was a lot of info on Skye flashes. Let's move on to her other abilities, starting of course with her Trailblazer, aka her Wolf. This is your Q ability that costs 300 credits, and the way you should think of Trailblazer is kind of like a Sova drone, but much faster, agile, and also on the ground. It's a great scouting tool to clear corners when taking space across the map, especially on the attack side. And of course, if you see any close by enemies, you can press your left mouse button to jump at them and stun them. This makes Trailblazer one of the best tools for your duelist players to follow, as you can quickly check corners for them, then jump and stun an enemy, making it super easy for them to pick up a free kill. On defense, you can just use it to re-clear areas that your team has lost control of and you want to regain that control, like elbow on bind, be heaven on split, or even tree on ascent. Once you have retaken these areas, it's gonna be much easier for your team to do a proper retake of the bomb site. Then of course we have her heal or regrowth, which nobody calls it that, by the way. Now there's nothing too complex about your heal. The main things you need to know are that it costs 150 credits, you need line of sight to the teammate you're trying to heal, and it can only be used on teammates, not yourself, and the best part is you can use it to heal up multiple teammates at a time, which can come in really clutch. In Valorant, there are so many abilities that do chip damage. That is, abilities that eat away at your health but won't kill you most of the time, like a Raise Nade, Sova Shock Darts, or any of the mollies in the game. Like I said, these won't kill you most of the time. So having a heal like Skye is always great to get your teammates back up to 100, giving them better survivability for the rest of the round. And lastly, there's your ultimate, which are your Seekers. This requires 7 ultimate points and spawns essentially 3 prowlers to find the 3 nearest enemies on the map to you. I would rarely use this in a 5v5 situation, as it's easier to tell where most players are. I think they're best used in the mid round when you're in those 3v3 or 2v3 situations and you really need to find those last few players. If you see them all going in one direction, that means the enemy team is stacking a site and your team should rotate to the opposite bomb site, ideally. If they're split up, you can follow one to an isolated player and try to beat them with raw numbers. They're also one of the best ults for retake, as you can quickly find all the ratty spots the attackers are playing in the post plant. Your prowlers will nearsight an enemy if it make contact with them. This is pretty rare as they're pretty easy to shoot out, so they're mostly just used as a scouting tool. They only lock onto enemies and start moving faster if they are within a certain range of that player. So be careful running a knife out behind your prowlers thinking enemies are far away, when in reality they're just playing a long angle with an op maybe, and prowlers haven't had the chance to latch onto them yet. Also, this ult may not be the strongest in the game, but I find it's best to try to use it as much as possible to farm it back up quickly. Like if you use your prowlers in a round, follow all 3 of them and get 3 kills, those 3 kills will already be added back to your ult points, meaning you can already be halfway back to your ult again after using it in the same round. So that's how you should be thinking of using them to get max value. And that is Skye, guys. She may seem a bit complicated with how many things you can do with the flashes, but honestly, she's pretty straightforward for a beginner, and with a little bit of time, you can really start mastering those flashes and the rest of her kit to start dominating the rank ladder. And another agent very strong in the meta right now, and has been for some time, is Viper. It's 2023. If you don't know how to play Viper yet, what are you doing? I will have my full Viper guide linked in the top left corner of your screen. Be sure to check it out if you haven't already. Damage yourself with a shock. Buy armor and then damage yourself. No, Corey, just shoot your feet, Corey. Corey, just shoot your feet, Corey. Don't let the intrusive dots win. I see you looking up, bro. Just shoot your feet.
Ended my fear.